The morning light spilled across the harbor like melted gold, glinting off the boats moored by the pier. Inside Harbor Cafe, Clara Evans wiped down the counter with the practiced rhythm of someone who had been doing it for years. The smell of roasted beans and warm pastries wrapped around her, familiar as a heartbeat. The cafe sat at the corner of the promenade, half diner, half coffee house, with big glass windows that framed the sea like a living painting. Clara tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and smiled at the first customers trickling in. Tourists wanted sea salt caramel lattes. Fishermen wanted black coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. She balanced orders with easy charm, her apron pocket stuffed with scribbled notes and a crumpled grocery list. Her world was small but steady. Her 6-year-old son, her sister Nora, the cafe, and a horizon that glittered just out of reach. At 10:30, the bell above the door chimed again. The man who stepped in didn't fit the sleepy rhythm of the town. Sebastian Hale carried the quiet authority of someone used to skyscrapers, not fishing boats. A charcoal coat hung from his shoulders, tailored within an inch of perfection. He scanned the room once, assessing, as if the cafe were a boardroom waiting for his approval. Then his eyes softened when they fell on the little boy beside him. Oliver Hale, small and serious in a navy sweater, clutched a toy plane and looked around with the curiosity of someone seeing ordinary things for the first time. "It smells nice here, Dad," he whispered. "Like pancakes." Clara smiled, setting down her cloth. "You're right, kiddo. Best pancakes on the coast." Oliver's face brightened. Sebastian looked up at her, gray eyes, calm but tired, the kind that had seen too much work and too little rest. "A table for two, please." She led them to the window where sunlight spilled across the wood. As they sat, Clara poured water into their glasses. "Special today is lemon ricotta pancakes with blueberry syrup," she said, "or our usual classic stack with butter and maple." Oliver raised his hand, as if in class. "Classic, with extra butter." Sebastian's mouth curved faintly. "And black coffee for me." "Thank you." When Clara walked back toward the counter, Nora nudged her from the espresso machine. "You realize who that is, right?" Clara frowned. "A customer?" Nora lowered her voice. "Sebastian Hale, the tech guy, billionaire something. He's been in the news. Bought the old Blakemore estate outside town." Clara blinked. "What's he doing here?" "Vacation, I guess. Rich people love pretending they're ordinary for a weekend." Clara glanced toward the window. Sebastian sat quietly, watching Oliver stir syrup into his milk like it was a science experiment. There was a distance in his posture, an invisible wall of grief or habit. Still, when the boy laughed, something inside the man seemed to thaw. A few minutes later, Clara brought their plates. Oliver's eyes widened at the mountain of pancakes. "Wow. Miss, did you make these?" "Every morning," she said. "Secret recipe, don't tell anyone." He grinned, syrup already on his chin. "You make better pancakes than Dad." Sebastian lifted his coffee, half smiling. "That's a low bar, Oliver. Last time I tried, the smoke alarm called the fire department." Clara laughed, surprised at how natural it felt. For a moment, the table looked like any father and son sharing breakfast. No headlines, no wealth, just warmth and sugar and sunlight. When she walked away again, Mrs. Whitmore, who rented the upstairs flat and occasionally helped at the till, leaned close. "That man's lost, child. I can see it. He needs a place that smells like home again." Clara shrugged lightly, not wanting to imagine what home meant to a man like that. She had enough of her own worries. The rent due Friday, her son's field trip fee, and a cracked tire on her old sedan. Billionaires belonged to a different universe entirely, but fate seemed amused by boundaries. Over the next week, Sebastian and Oliver returned every morning, always to the same window table. Oliver would chatter about seagulls and jellyfish while his father typed brief emails between bites of toast. Eventually, Clara learned that Sebastian's wife had died 2 years ago. He didn't say it directly, but the silence after Oliver mentioned Mom told her enough. By Friday, Oliver greeted her like family. "Miss Clara, can you sit with us for pancakes today?" She laughed softly. "If I did, Who'd bring the coffee to everyone else? I could help, he said earnestly. Dad, can I be a waiter? Sebastian looked at his son, then at her. Only if Miss Clara allows interns. She waved a hand. We always have room for extra help, especially ones with good smiles. Oliver beamed and scampered off to refill water glasses with exaggerated care. Sebastian watched, amused. He hasn't smiled like that in months, he said quietly. Clara wiped her hands on her apron. Kids know where kindness is welcome. He just needed space to be himself. Sebastian studied her face for a moment, as if memorizing the warmth behind her words. Outside, the harbor breeze flooded the cafe curtains. In that simple morning light, something shifted, small, fragile, but undeniable. Later, as he paid the bill, he said, "We'll see you tomorrow, Miss Clara." "Looking forward to it," she replied, surprised to find that she truly was. He paused, hand on the door, and looked back once more. The sunlight caught his hair. The air smelled of coffee and sea salt. Then he nodded slightly and stepped into the day with Oliver beside him. Two figures walking toward the pier, one tall and guarded, the other small and free. Clara watched them until they disappeared behind the boats. She didn't know that this morning, the simple act of serving pancakes had already begun to rewrite all their lives. The following days folded into each other with the rhythm of tide and time. The harbor woke, the cafe filled, and Clara learned to expect the tall figure and the bright-eyed boy who appeared like clockwork at 9:30. They always chose the same table, the one by the window that overlooked the boats, and somehow it began to feel like their table. Sebastian Hale was a man of quiet routine. He'd enter with his phone still in hand, murmuring quick instructions to some distant assistant, while Oliver darted straight to the counter to see if Clara had saved a chocolate chip muffin for him. She always had. Sometimes, when the breakfast rush slowed, she caught herself glancing their way. Sebastian's eyes softened more each morning. He still carried that quiet gravity, but there was something else now, a gentleness that surfaced whenever Oliver laughed. Clara wondered if that kind of love ever stopped hurting once you'd lost it. One gray Thursday morning, a mist hung over the harbor, and few customers came in. The cafe felt smaller, the world quieter. Oliver was bent over a coloring book, humming under his breath, while Sebastian typed on his laptop. When Clara brought their coffee, he looked up. "You always make time for everyone here," he said, "even when it's chaos." She smiled a little shyly. "That's the job. Besides, people come here for more than coffee. They come to be seen." Sebastian studied her, the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "And who sees you, Miss Evans?" The question landed softly, but it made her pause. She hadn't thought about it in years. "My son, when I get home before he falls asleep," she said. "That's enough." Before he could reply, Oliver piped up, "Dad, look, I drew you and Miss Clara." He turned the page toward them. Two stick figures stood behind a counter, with a smiling sun above. Between them, a smaller figure with a toy airplane hovered midair. Clara laughed. "That's lovely, Oliver. You even got my apron. And your hair," he said proudly. "It's curly like noodles." Sebastian chuckled, a sound that felt strange on him, lighter than his usual tone. "That's quite the portrait." "It's us," Oliver declared. "We're happy." For a moment, none of them spoke. The word hung in the air. Happy, such a simple thing, yet so rare. Sebastian leaned back, his gaze distant. Oliver's mother used to draw with him. He hasn't taken out those crayons in months. Clara's voice softened. Grief doesn't vanish. It just waits quietly until something kind enough makes it lift for a moment. He looked at her then, really looked, as to try and understand how someone with so little could speak like that, with empathy that didn't pity, only understood. The bell over the door jingled suddenly, breaking the silence. Amelia cross-stepped inside, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. She was tall, polished, and entirely out of place among the wooden chairs and seaside charm. "Sebastian," she said smoothly, removing her sunglasses. "I didn't expect to find you here." He stood automatically, politeness reflexive. "Amelia, what brings you to Harbor Cafe?" "Curiosity," she said, eyes sweeping the room before landing on Clara. "You've been spending quite a bit of time here, haven't you?" Oliver frowned. Miss Clara makes the best pancakes. You should try them." Amelia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure she does." She turned to Sebastian. "You're due at the foundation luncheon next week. Your father's expecting you." "I'll be there," he said. "I've just been taking some time." Her tone softened, but only slightly. "You can't stay hidden in small towns forever. Sebastian, people talk." He glanced at Oliver, who was now quietly coloring again. "Let them." Amelia followed his gaze, then looked back to Clara. "I suppose you're the reason he's been hiding." Clara straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. "I just served coffee, ma'am." Amelia's smile was thin as glass. "Of course." She turned to leave, perfume trailing behind like a curtain closing. Sebastian exhaled. "I'm sorry about that." Clara shook her head. "You don't owe me an apology." But when he met her eyes, something unspoken passed between them. A quiet understanding that what had just happened was more than a misunderstanding of class. It was a reminder of the walls between their worlds. Later, when the cafe emptied, Clara found a note under the saucer at their table. "Thank you for the warmth you give my son. Signed simply, S." She folded the note carefully and slipped it into her apron pocket. She didn't know why her hands trembled or why her heart beat faster when she read it again later that night. Outside, the harbor lights shimmered across the dark water. Somewhere on the far side of town, in a house much too big for one man and a child, Sebastian Hale sat by his window, staring at that same horizon, and for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about loss. He was thinking about her. The weekend brought a stretch of sun that glittered over the bay like a spill of coins. The tourists filled the docks. The gulls wheeled overhead, and inside Harbor Café the air was alive with chatter. Yet in the middle of the bustle, Clara felt something quieter moving beneath the surface of her daze. It began each time the bell over the door chimed in Sebastian, and Oliver stepped inside. By now, Oliver no longer waited for a table. He rushed behind the counter as if he owned the place, slipping a small apron over his sweater and helping Clara manage the muffin display. Sebastian would sit by the window, phone forgotten, watching them with that half-smile that was starting to feel less rare. One slow afternoon, the cafe was nearly empty except for a few locals reading papers. The smell of cinnamon rolls drifted in the sunlight. Clara set a fresh mug of coffee in front of Sebastian. "Careful," she said. "It's strong enough to wake the dead." "I'll need it," he murmured, glancing at the screen of his laptop. "Board meetings don't stop just because the ocean looks peaceful." "Maybe they should." He looked up. "What about you? Ever take a break?" She laughed. "If I did, the place might fall apart." There was a pause, then he said, "You work too hard for someone who makes everything look easy." Clara felt a warmth rise to her cheeks. "Habit. I like keeping things running." "People like you keep the world running," he said quietly. "People like me just rearrange it." The honesty in his tone surprised her. For a moment, the only sound was the slow hiss of the espresso machine. She wanted to ask what he meant, but Oliver came bounding back with a tray holding 2 glasses of orange juice and a muffin balanced precariously in the middle. "Special delivery," he announced. Sebastian reached to steady the tray. "You'll be CEO before you're 7. "I'd rather be a waiter," Oliver said. "Waiters make people smile." Clara smiled. "That's the best reason I've ever heard." Oliver beamed, then leaned against the counter. "Miss Clara, can we go feed the ducks later?" "Dad promised." Sebastian looked faintly guilty. "I didn't I? But you might have to show me where the ducks hide." "There's a pond behind the pier," Clara offered. "Hardly anyone goes there. Perfect for duck bribery." Oliver's eyes widened. "You should come too." The invitation hung in the air, sweet and simple. Clara hesitated. She hadn't been out for fun in months, maybe years. But Oliver's hope was infectious, and Sebastian's expression, half amused, half uncertain, was impossible to refuse. "I finish at 2, she said. "If you're still around, I'll show you." Oliver clapped. "Deal." When the clock struck 2, the cafe door closed behind them, and the world outside felt washed clean. The three of them walked along the boardwalk, gulls swooping low over the water. Sebastian carried a small paper bag of breadcrumbs. Oliver skipped between them, and Clara found herself laughing more than she expected. At the pond, sunlight scattered across the ripples. Oliver threw crumbs, shrieking when ducks scrambled for them. Sebastian stood beside Clara, hands in his pockets, watching his son with quiet awe. "He's happier here," Sebastian said. "In the city, he barely speaks." "It's the air," she said, "and the space. Kids need to breathe." He nodded. "So do adults." She turned toward him. "You built your life on deadlines. Maybe breathing wasn't part of the plan." "I forgot how," he admitted. "Then we came here." For a moment, they simply watched the boy chase after a duck that was clearly unimpressed by his enthusiasm. The laughter echoed off the water, bright and alive. Clara spoke softly. "You're a good father." He looked at her, almost startled. "I don't feel like one most days." "You show up," she said. "That's more than most." The wind caught a strand of her hair, and before she could brush it away, he reached out gently, tucking it behind her ear. The touch was brief, but it sent something warm and unfamiliar through her chest. "Sorry," he murmured. "Habit. My wife's hair used to—" He stopped himself, the air between them tightening. Clara met his gaze. "It's okay." They stood in silence, the kind that isn't uncomfortable, but full of things unspoken. Oliver ran up, panting. "Miss Clara, did you see? One of them ate from my hand." "That means he trusts you," she said. "Like I trust you," he blurted, grinning. Sebastian smiled down at his son. "That's quite a compliment." The boy nodded seriously. "Dad, you should trust her too." Sebastian's eyes flicked toward Clara. "I do." The simplicity of his answer left her breathless. They stayed until the sun dipped low, turning the water copper. When they finally walked back toward town, Oliver rode on his father's shoulders, chattering about naming ducks. Clara walked beside them, the rhythm of their steps falling naturally in sync. At the cafe door, she turned to them. "Thank you for the company. I can't remember the last time I laughed that much." Sebastian's expression softened. "We should thank you. You gave him a good day." Oliver yawned. "Best day ever." She crouched to his level. "Then you'd better come back soon." He hugged her suddenly, small arms fierce around her neck. "Promise." When they left, she watched them cross the street, the tall man and the little boy fading into the glow of the sunset. For a long time she stood there, heart full of a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Later that night, as she closed the cafe, Nora teased her gently. "You've been smiling for hours. Let me guess. Mystery billionaire and his adorable son." Clara rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide the blush. "It's not like that. Yet," Nora said, grinning, "just don't forget that hearts are harder to mend than coffee cups." When Clara finally lay in bed, the sound of Oliver's laughter still echoed her ears. It was a sound she didn't realize she'd been missing. Across town, in the great stone house overlooking the sea, Sebastian stood at a window, watching the waves catch the last traces of light. Oliver slept curled up with his toy airplane. Sebastian thought of Clara's smile, of the warmth she carried like sunlight. For the first time in years, he imagined a future that didn't feel hollow. He didn't know what to call it yet, but he knew it began at a cafe by the harbor. And somewhere deep inside, a question began to form, one he wasn't ready to ask but couldn't ignore. What if home wasn't a place at all, but a person who made you feel seen again? The next few days blurred into a soft rhythm. The mornings began with the hum of the espresso machine, the faint chatter of early customers, and the warm sunlight that always seemed to find Clara. But beneath the comfort routine, something had shifted. Every time the bell over the cafe door jingled, her heart paused, just for a moment, before her mind caught up. And almost every time, it was them. Sebastian and Oliver had become part of the place. Oliver now had a favorite seat, a corner booth beside the big bay window, where he could watch the seagulls dive into the water. He'd color pictures while his dad worked quietly beside him, Sometimes, Clara would bring him extra whipped cream on his cocoa, pretending it was an accidental overflow. It wasn't accidental. Not even once. This morning, though, the air felt different. Sebastian was quieter. His usual polite smile was missing, replaced by a weight in his expression that even Oliver seemed to notice. "Dad's grumpy," the boy whispered loudly to Clara. "He got a call from the big mean people at work." Clara bit back a laugh. "The big mean people, huh?" Sebastian sighed, running a hand through his hair. "My board wants me back in the city. They're threatening to relocate our operations if I don't return soon." Her stomach sank a little. "That's serious." "It is." He stared at the black coffee she just placed in front of him. "But the idea of leaving this place," he paused, searching for the right word, "feels heavier than it should." Oliver looked between them, clearly sensing the tension. Can Miss Clara come to the city? The question caught both adults off guard. Clara blinked. "I think the city already has plenty of waitresses, sweetheart. But not like you," he said earnestly. "You make Dad smile. He never smiles at work." Sebastian shot her an embarrassed glance. "Out of the mouths of children, right?" Clara chuckled softly. "He's observant." They tried to steer the morning back to normal, but a quiet sadness lingered in the background. Every interaction, every shared look, every half-smile seemed to carry the awareness that something precious might soon end. At noon, the café emptied out, and the three of them were left alone. Oliver had fallen asleep in the booth, his small head resting on a pile of napkins. The sun lit his face in a golden glow. Sebastian stood beside the counter, his voice low. "Clara, I've been meaning to ask you something." She turned, drying her hands on a towel. "What is it?" He hesitated, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "Before I came here, I wasn't looking for anything. Not friendship, not comfort, and definitely not." He broke off. "But then you appeared. You've been kind to my son in a way no one has since his mother died." Her breath caught. "I didn't know." "It was 2 years ago," he said quietly. "Oliver doesn't remember much. I thought bringing him here would be a reset. I didn't expect you." She looked at him, eyes soft. "You don't have to apologize for caring. Sebastian." He smiled faintly, almost shyly, a strange thing for a man like him. "That's the problem. I don't know what I'm allowed to feel anymore." Clara's chest tightened. She had heard the tremor in his voice. Not romantic, not yet, but honest. Human. She poured him another coffee, setting it gently in front of him. "You're allowed to feel human," she said. "Even billionaires are." He chuckled, the tension easing. "You always know what to say." "I just know what tired people sound like." He looked up. "You think I'm tired?" "I think you've been living like the world owed you perfection. And now you're realizing you'd trade all that for peace." Their eyes met for a long, quiet second that felt like it stretched across years. Just then, Oliver stirred, yawning. "Dad? Did I miss the pancakes?" Sebastian laughed softly. "You missed breakfast, yes. But maybe Miss Clara can make an exception." Clara winked. "For my favorite customer?" "Always." While she flipped pancakes behind the counter, Sebastian watched her, his gaze steady, thoughtful. The sound of sizzling butter filled the space. Oliver hummed to himself as he colored another picture, this one of 3 smiling stick figures beside what looked like a cafe. When Clara brought the plate to the table, Oliver held it up proudly. "Look, Miss Clara, it's us." She smiled at the drawing. "That's beautiful." Sebastian looked at the picture, then at her. "He sees you as family," he said quietly. Her hands stilled. "That's sweet." "More than that," he said. "It's telling." The air grew softer again, not heavy, but full of something unspoken. When they finally left that afternoon, Sebastian turned back at the door. "Clara, would you join us for dinner tomorrow? Just as friends. Oliver's been asking for a goodbye meal, and he exhaled. "I'd like to thank you properly." She hesitated. Her instinct said no. It was safer that way. But the look on Oliver's hopeful face undid her. "All right," she said. "Dinner it is." Oliver's cheer filled the cafe. "Yes, Miss Clara is coming to dinner." As the door closed behind them, Clara leaned against the counter, her heart racing. Nora emerged from the back, smirking. Dinner. Huh? That's not nothing. Clara tried to hide her smile. It's just dinner. Sure, Nora said, wiping her hands. And I'm just a barista. That night, as Clara locked up, she stood for a long moment in the doorway, watching the quiet harbor lights dance across the water. Something was changing. She could feel it in her bones. Across town, Sebastian sat at his desk, the glow of the lamp soft on his face. Oliver was already asleep upstairs, clutching his drawing. On the desk in front of Sebastian lay that same drawing, 3 stick figures standing together beneath the words, "My family." He traced the crayon lines with his finger and smiled faintly. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about mergers or stock prices. He was thinking about a small diner, the smell of coffee, and a woman who made both him and his son laugh again. Tomorrow, he decided, would not be goodbye, not if he could help it. And as he turned off the light, a quiet question echoed in his heart, one that scared him as much as it warmed him. What if this woman, this waitress, was the answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking? The next evening unfolded beneath a soft, amber sky. The sun melted into the horizon, leaving streaks of pink and violet across the water. Clara stood outside the Seabird, a quiet seaside restaurant that overlooked the harbor. It wasn't fancy, not in a glittering city way, but it carried the kind of warmth she loved. Flickering candles, small tables, and windows that framed the waves as if they were part of the decor. She smoothed her simple navy blue dress and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. She wasn't sure why she was nervous. It was just dinner, she told herself, a farewell meal, nothing more. And yet, her heart thudded in her chest like it hadn't in years. "Miss Clara," the familiar little voice cut through the evening air. Oliver came running toward her, his small feet tapping against the cobblestones, his grin wide enough to melt any pretense she had of calm. "Hey, you!" she laughed, kneeling to his level. "You look very handsome tonight." He twirled around proudly, showing off a tiny gray blazer that matched his father's. "Dad says we have to dress nice for ladies." Clara looked up, and there was Sebastian, walking toward her in a charcoal suit that managed to look effortless and commanding all at once. The golden light softened his sharp features, and for a fleeting moment, he looked less like a CEO and more like a man learning how to live again. "You look," he hesitated, as if the right word might break something fragile. "Beautiful." "Thank you," she said quietly. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He smiled. "Shall we?" Inside, the restaurant glowed with warmth. Soft jazz played in the background, and the scent of grilled salmon drifted through the air. They were shown to a table by the window, the sea stretching endlessly beyond the glass. Oliver was quick to claim the seat between them. "This is perfect. I can talk to both of you at once." Clara chuckled. "Efficient, aren't you?" Sebastian unfolded his napkin, amused. "He gets that from me." They ordered, Clara choosing something simple, Sebastian opting for seafood, and Oliver requesting pancakes, despite it being dinner time. As they waited, conversation came easily. Oliver filled every pause with chatter about his drawings, his favorite animals, and his new best friend, which apparently was Clara. Sebastian listened, occasionally interrupting to tease or gently correct his son, and Clara found herself watching the pair with a quiet ache. She hadn't realized how much she missed this. Laughter shared over a meal, the easy warmth of belonging, the way love could exist in small, unspoken gestures. When the food arrived, the glow between them deepened. Oliver smeared syrup on his chin. Clara helped him clean it up, and Sebastian, for once, wasn't checking his phone. He was present, fully, quietly, beautifully present. Halfway through the meal, Oliver leaned against Clara's arm, eyes growing heavy. "I'm sleepy," he mumbled. "You can rest, buddy," Sebastian said softly. "You had a big day." Clara smiled as the boy nestled closer to her, his small hand curled around hers. She could feel his heartbeat, steady, trusting, and something inside her cracked open. "He's amazing," she whispered. Sebastian's eyes softened. "He is. His mother would have adored you." Clara's heart skipped. "That's kind of you to say." "It's true." He paused. She was gentle like you, but life, it took its toll on her. On us. He sighed, looking down. When she passed, I threw myself into work. It was easier than feeling. She listened, quiet, letting the words settle. I told myself I was doing for Oliver, he went on, voice low, building a future, protecting him. But I was really just running. Then one day we came here, and suddenly my son was laughing again, and his gaze met hers, steady but uncertain. I started to remember what peace felt like. The honesty in his tone reached her deeper than she expected. She wanted to say something, to remind him that healing wasn't weakness, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she reached across the table, touching his hand lightly. Sometimes peace finds you where you least expect it, she said, and sometimes it wears an apron. He laughed softly, shaking his head. You make it sound easy. It's not, but it's real. For a moment, they simply sat there, hands resting together in the space between coffee cups and candlelight. The silence was tender, filled with something neither of them dared to name. Oliver stirred, muttering in his sleep, and the moment dissolved gently, like a wave retreating to the sea. I should get him home, Sebastian murmured. Clara nodded, standing. Of course. They walked outside together. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of salt and jasmine. Oliver slept soundly in his father's arms. When they reached Clara's car, Sebastian hesitated. I don't know how to thank you, Clara, for everything, for reminding us what kindness feels like. You already have, she said softly. You let me feel like I mattered again. He looked at her for a long moment, then said, This doesn't feel like goodbye. She smiled faintly. Maybe it isn't. Before she could step away, Oliver murmured sleepily, Miss Clara, will you be my mom? The words landed like a spark in the quiet night. Clara froze. Sebastian did too. Oliver, he started, his voice gentle. But Clara's eyes were wide, her breath caught between shock and tenderness. She bent down, brushing a hand over the boy's hair. Sleep, sweetheart, she whispered. Dream good dreams. Sebastian watched her, really watched her, and for the first time, something inside him shifted. He realized that the question his son had asked so innocently was the one his own heart had been afraid to say aloud. As he drove away, Clara stood on the sidewalk, watching the taillights fade into the distance. Her heart was trembling, but not with fear. It was something deeper, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, and though she didn't know what would happen next, she couldn't shake the echo of the little boy's voice. Will you be my mom? The words lingered like a promise. The city had a way of swallowing silence. It buzzed, thrummed, and moved relentlessly forward, horns blaring, heels clattering, the hum of power filling the air like static. But to Sebastian, standing before the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, the city felt hollow. He'd been back for only 3 days. 3 impossibly long days since that night by the sea, since the dinner where laughter had felt easy and the question, will you be my mom? Had cracked open something in his chest he couldn't close again. He should have felt relieved to return. The board was pleased, investors reassured, and his assistant had already scheduled a dozen meetings to re-establish momentum. But the coffee tasted like dust, the rooms echoed with emptiness, and even Oliver, once bright and curious, had fallen silent. Sebastian glanced at his desk. It was neat, perfect, untouched. A vase of fresh white lilies sat near the window, their scent faint and clean. He had bought them out of habit, the same way he used it for his late wife. But now, they reminded him of Clara, the way she always kept a tiny vase of daisies beside the register, to make mornings less serious, she had said. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. His phone buzzed with notifications, but he ignored them. Instead, he turned toward the small couch in his office, where Oliver sat sketching quietly. Hey, buddy, Sebastian said softly. You hungry? Oliver shook his head without looking up. Still drawing? The boy nodded. I'm drawing Miss Clara's café. I remember the lights. And the ducks. Sebastian's throat tightened. You miss her, huh? Oliver finally looked up. Don't you? He hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, I do. Oliver set down his crayon. Then why can't we go back? Sebastian crouched beside him, resting a hand on his son's small shoulder. Because grown-up things get complicated sometimes. Oliver frowned. But you said being kind makes things simple. He almost smiled, because of course Clara's words had stuck with him too. The next morning, the cycle continued. Meetings, reports, dinners that meant nothing. But no matter how many hours he filled, a part of his mind drifted back to the diner. The smell of coffee, the sound of Clara's laughter, the sight of her apron strings fluttering as she moved. That evening, while reviewing proposals, his assistant Miranda stepped in. Sir, about the charity gala this weekend. Will you be attending alone? Sebastian looked up from his papers. What? The gala. The board expects your presence. And, well, she hesitated, glancing toward Oliver's drawing on the desk. You usually bring a guest. He thought of the sterile dinners, the polite smiles, the endless small talk. He thought of Clara laughing over burnt toast, of Oliver's joy when she listened to his stories like they were treasures. No, he said finally, I won't be attending. Miranda blinked. Sir. He straightened his papers. Tone final. Cancel everything for the weekend. Oliver and I are taking a trip. She paused, studying him. Back to the coast? A faint smile tugged at his lips. You could say that. By the time they reached the seaside town, the sun was dipping low again, painting the sky in orange and rose. Oliver pressed his face to the window, excitement blooming instantly. We're back, he shouted. Sebastian chuckled. Looks like someone's happy. She's going to be so surprised. Oliver said, Do you think she'll remember us? Sebastian smiled faintly. I don't think she could forget. When they stepped into Harbor Café, the familiar bell jingled above their heads. The smell hit him first, coffee, vanilla, and something that felt like home. Clara stood behind the counter, her hair loosely tied, her apron smudged with flour. She looked up, mid-laugh at something Nora said, and froze. Sebastian? Her voice was soft, disbelieving. He nodded, suddenly unsure of what to say. I hope we're not interrupting. Oliver darted forward before she could reply. Miss Clara. He wrapped his arms around her waist, grinning so wide his cheeks dimpled. We came back. Clara laughed, bending to hug him. I can see that. You grew taller in just a few days. When she looked up again, her eyes met Sebastian's. You didn't say goodbye properly, she teased gently. I know, he admitted. That was my mistake. The cafe quieted around them, even Nora pretending to busy herself while eavesdropping. Clara gestured to their old table by the window. Sit down. You both look like you could use cocoa. They did. And when she brought the cups over, steaming and rich, Sebastian finally exhaled, as if the air in this little diner was the first real breath he'd taken all week. Oliver happily dove into his drink, chocolate mustache and all. Sebastian, though, looked at Clara, his expression softer than before. I tried to go back to my life, he said quietly, but it didn't feel right anymore. The city, it doesn't sound the same without your laughter in it. She blinked, caught off guard. Sebastian, I'm not saying this to complicate things, he continued. I just needed you to know you changed something in me, and in him. He nodded toward Oliver, who was now busy drawing another cafe picture, this time with 4 figures instead of 3. Her heart squeezed. Sebastian, He leaned forward, his voice low. I don't expect anything. I just wanted to see you again, to thank you for giving my son joy. She smiled, gentle and real. You don't have to thank me. He gave me joy, too. They sat there for a while, comfortable in the quiet, watching the evening light spill across the floor. Oliver finished his drawing and slid it toward them. This is us, he said proudly. See? Dad, me, Miss Clara, and the ducks. Clara laughed softly. I love it. Sebastian glanced at the picture, then at her. Maybe we should frame this one. Oliver nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, for our new home. Both adults froze. Clara's voice faltered. Your new home. Oliver looked between them, grinning. If we stay here forever, we can all be together. Then Miss Clara won't have to work so much, and Dad can drink coffee every day. Sebastian looked at his son, then at her, and for the first time, he didn't try to correct him. Maybe, he said softly, eyes never leaving Clara's. Maybe that's not such a bad idea. She met his gaze, and something wordless passed between them, fragile and luminous. Not a promise yet, but the beginning of one. Outside, the sea murmured against the shore, and for the first time in years, Sebastian felt the world slow down. He wasn't sure what would happen next. If he'd sell the company, stay in the town, or try to blend both worlds. But as Clara poured him another cup of coffee and Oliver hummed quietly beside them, he knew one thing for certain. He'd finally come home. The morning sun filtered to the cafe's large windows, turning the small space into a golden haven. Steam rose from mugs of coffee, mingling with the faint scent of freshly baked pastries. Clara wiped down the counter, humming softly, when the bell above the door jingled. Oliver bounded in ahead of Sebastian, as usual, backpack swinging wildly. "Miss Clara, look, I made a volcano out of Legos." He dashed to a corner table, where he had carefully arranged a miniature landscape. Clara laughed, kneeling to inspect it. "Wow, this is incredible, Oliver. Did you remember to add the dinosaurs?" He nodded vigorously. "Of course." Dad said dinosaurs make everything better. Sebastian lingered by the door, watching them. Clara's eyes sparkled as she ruffled Oliver's hair, and something in Sebastian's chest loosened. The tension he had carried for months seemed to melt. He loved his life, his work, the city, and the world he had built. But in the small, sunlit cafe, watching Clara interact with his son, he felt the warmth of family. Oliver turned suddenly, eyes shining. "Dad, Miss Clara, can you play dinosaurs with me after lunch?" Clara smiled softly. "I think we can make that happen, buddy." Sebastian stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Actually, there's something I've been meaning to ask you, Clara." Oliver's ears perked up. "Ooh, is it a question about dinosaurs? Or maybe volcanoes?" Clara tilted her head, sensing the seriousness in Sebastian's tone. "What is it, Sebastian?" He swallowed, nervously adjusting the cuff of his shirt. It's about us. About the three of us." Oliver's grin widened. "Us." "Yes, buddy," Sebastian said, kneeling to meet his son's gaze. "I've been thinking a lot about who should be your mom, and I want to know what you think." Oliver's eyes grew wide, and for a moment, the cafe seemed to hold its breath. He shuffled his feet, then looked straight at Clara, his small hand resting atop the Lego volcano. "I think it should be Miss Clara," he exclaimed, pointing decisively. "She makes the best pancakes, knows all the good jokes, and she makes everything fun. Even homework." Clara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She knelt beside Oliver, taking both of his small hands in hers. "Oliver, that's very sweet. But why would you choose me?" "Because you make me happy," he said simply. "And Dad is happier too. You don't just fix the pancakes, you fix the sad days. You're kind and funny, and you love dinosaurs even when they're messy." Sebastian's throat tightened, and he reached over, brushing a strand of Clara's hair behind her ear. "Oliver is right," he said, voice low but steady. "Clara, you become the person I trust most in his life. I know now that no contract, no arrangement, could ever compare to what you bring. Your care, your heart, your presence. I can't imagine raising him without you." Clara's hands trembled slightly as she absorbed his words. Her mind raced back to the first time she had met Sebastian and Oliver, the spilled coffee, the chaos, the unexpected invitation to their table. She had thought it was absurd, impossible even, that a billionaire would choose her, a simple café waitress, to become part of his life. Yet here she was, holding the hands of the boy who had unknowingly claimed her heart. I don't even know what to say," she whispered, voice catching. I never thought I could be this important in someone's life like this." Sebastian leaned closer, placing a hand over hers. "Then don't say anything, Clara. Just stay with us. That's all I'm asking." Oliver clapped his hands together. "Yes. So it's official then? You're going to be my mom." Clara laughed softly, brushing tears from her cheeks. Yes, Oliver. I'd love to be your mom. If you'll have me. Oliver launched himself at her for a hug, nearly toppling the table in the process. I knew it. I knew you'd say yes. Sebastian chuckled, watching them. The cafe's other patrons glanced their way, some smiling at the scene, others shaking their heads at the chaos of the tiny family moment. But Sebastian didn't care. His life, once ruled by spreadsheets and meetings, had found its balance in this small, sunlit corner of the city. He reached down to ruffle Oliver's hair. So it's settled, he said. We're a family, not because of contracts, not because of arrangements, but because we choose each other. Clara nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. I never imagined a day like this, she admitted softly. Sebastian smiled, leaning back against the counter. Neither did I. But sometimes the most extraordinary things come from the simplest choices. From spilled coffee, from shared laughter, from little hands pointing the way. Oliver grinned up at them, eyes sparkling. And now we can build real volcanoes at home. And pancakes every Saturday. Clara laughed, hugging him again. Every Saturday, buddy. And maybe even some weekdays, too. Sebastian watched the exchange, feeling a surge of gratitude and relief. For once, the city noise, the corporate pressures, the constant race of his life seemed to fade into the background. Here, in this moment, they were a family. Whole, imperfect, and joyfully theirs. The cafe bell jingled once more as new customers entered, but Sebastian didn't move. He didn't need to. His eyes stayed on Clara and Oliver, watching as the boy animatedly recounted his Lego volcano plans. And she listened with genuine delight. The future was uncertain. There would still be challenges, balancing work, school, life, and love. But Sebastian finally understood that some things weren't solved with money or contracts. Some things were built slowly, with trust, laughter, and shared moments of joy. He took Clara's hand, squeezing it gently. Thank you, he murmured. For what? She asked, looking up at him. For choosing us, he said simply. Clara smiled, leaning her head slightly against his shoulder. No, Sebastian, thank you for trusting me. Oliver looked between them, grinning from ear to ear. Can we have pancakes now? Clara laughed, ruffling his hair. Absolutely, buddy. Let's make them the best ones yet. Sebastian watched them, his heart full. The world outside could spin wildly, fortunes would rise and fall, and life could throw challenges at them at every turn. But here in this small, golden cafe, they had found what truly mattered. Family. And for the first time in years, Sebastian felt like he was exactly where he belonged.